And Top Story is always brought to you by Vodafone, and I will hear from you here on News Night later. And then, of course, on Top Story, please share your views with us. It is exactly 1 week since the National Democratic Congress filed the formal petition with the Inspector General of Police demanding the arrest and prosecution of a Greek minister, Brian Champon. Mr. Champon had been widely condemned for making incendiary comments following, of course, a political event at which he had declared that the NPP will do everything and will use any means necessary to win next year's general elections and will never hand over power to the NDC. Well, a week on, the police has failed to effect an arrest. The IGP instead called leaders of both the NDC and the MPP into a meeting in an attempt to calm political tensions. Well, it is emerging tonight that the NDC has been left unhappy with the approach that the police service has adopted in dealing with this particular matter, and has called the National Executive Committee meeting on this very issue. We'll get into that pretty shortly. Just before we came on air, we spoke to the Deputy General Secretary of the party, Mustafa Gbande, who articulated the party's position on the IGP's attempt to adopt a reconciliatory approach rather than implementing and enforcing the law.
It is not a business of the police to be scrutinizing. First of all, once an allegation or a complaint is made, it is a duty of the police, not by decision or by choice, to invite the fellow and then subject the fellow's conduct, because you have to be at a position where the suspect is giving you a testimony or being heard on the allegation against him or her. However, that person constitutes a suspect before you. Whether you charge him or not is another matter. So we expect that the police should enforce the fair corridor of law enforcement. Invite the person because an allegation is being made. If an organization feels that one person's conduct have the tendency to compromise our peace, invite the person and then you will be seen doing your work. Don't constitute yourself into a palace and calling for stakeholder engagement. That is not the work of the police. A man who is estranged and making threatening comments, that man should be curtailed from furthering his comments. That is when the police comes in to stop him, to invite him, and to caution him. Then investigation continues. You would have seen doing your work.
Let's get into, so what really happened in this meeting and why is the NDC unhappy? The police overnight issued a statement last night into what really happened, giving us a brief into what really happened when the parties met with the IGP. We're now seeing pictures of this also now being circulated, and it appeared, if you look at the pictures, that it was a pretty friendly discussion because all parties seem to be pretty hearty, laughing, but as we're now learning, the approach that the police has adopted has not pleased the NDC. So Kojo Brace joins me in the studio with details of what the police's account is as far as this is concerned. The police say that in this meeting, they allow the parties to express their grievances.
Exactly, and the main point raised by these parties in respect to comment by some political actors from both sides of the divide, which they consider to be inflammatory. Now, the police also briefed them on two strategic interventions introduced by the service to handle election and politically related incidents as part of the police transformation agenda. Now, the police used the opportunity to provide an update on the status of political violence and related incidents recorded during the recent internal elections of both parties, including, Evans, you remember, the arrest and prosecution of some 14 members of the NPP for disturbances during their constituency elections at Enchi.
Yes. And
the arrest of 9 out of the 16 wanted individuals for disturbances at the National Youth and Women Organizer pose of the NDC at Cape Coast.
Okay, so the police was in this meeting careful to stress that they've been applying the law.
Exactly.
On both sides of the political divide.
Yes.
They've arrested NDC folks, they've arrested MPP folks.
Yes.
But I'm pretty sure in this meeting, the NDC would have raised the subject of the killings that happened during the elections of 2020.
Yeah, so the police also seized the opportunity to provide an update on the status of the 2020 general elections related cases, including, the popular Techiman South one and Odo constituencies, and the public will be duly updated on these cases in the course of the week.
So we're not giving any updates on
yes,
that, but
yes,
I believe
that they gave an update to
the parties
there.
We'll
Yes,
try and get a clarity on what update was there
Was
for
given.
them that the IGP gave them in this particular meeting. But to the issue, which is the violence that often characterizes elections in this country. The police also announced to them that they've adopted a different approach to dealing with this particular problem.
Sure. So according to the police, they've set up some 2 systems to deal with these. So first is what they call the Police Election Security Secretariat. That's the secretariat they've established to work with all political parties and other stakeholders to enhance management of security of all elections in the country. So they say in the past they would wait and form this particular task force.
Yeah, I mean, we have a task force now. There's a permanent secretariat that will deal with everything from primaries to internal party elections, etc. But let's narrow down to the real controversy, which is the Brian Champon comment. And last week, exactly a week ago today, the party, the NDC, sent a petition to the IGP. They were demanding a few things, amongst them arrest him and prosecute him for the comment that he made.
Yeah.
Did the IGP provide any specific update on what they've done since then? It appears that they may not have actually acted or maybe adopted a different approach in dealing with this.
Okay, so let's start from somewhere. They say that now what they've done is to set up a dedicated legal team to subject all politically related incidents to legal scrutiny to establish whether there are elements of crime or otherwise before any police action is taken. So to the substantive now, the initiative, which is the legal team, has now been used to analyze all recent cases, such as comment made by the Honorable Minister of Food and Agriculture and the constituency youth organizer of the NDC at Swami, among others. At the meeting here, both parties were also urged that these policing interventions in place, they should do their politics and allow the police to do their policing.
Okay.
So you go ahead and do your politics. We will do the other
But
side.
importantly, the police say we have adopted a different approach. We have a legal team now that is looking at political related incidents.
Yes.
And we are scrutinizing it.
Yes.
That legal team will scrutinize it. We want to first determine if we can take legal action.
Exactly.
If there's nothing to charge them with, we won't proceed.
So
and then they
to the
go on
police,
to make the point that on Brian Champon, they have used that framework to scrutinize and analyze what he's done.
Exactly.
But then they didn't tell us in the statement. So following the scrutiny, following the analysis you did, what did you decide to do? Did you come to the conclusion that there was a legal basis to proceed to charge him? Or you came to a conclusion that you've analyzed it legally and there's no course of action and so you let it go? We don't know that.
Exactly. That is not provided. But there's something here probably. According to the police, what they are doing is a paradigm shift from the practice in the past where people were arrested in the heat of the moment for politically related incident as a result of attempt by politicians or either side to whip up public sentiment against the police, thereby creating the impression that the police support one side against the other. So what they want to do is that in the heat of it, we won't
go. Going to jump into
exactly.
We want to take our time, study it carefully before we move.
Yes.
Which appears to, for many people who look at that and say, well, that is a more considered, rational approach to doing things. But once you do it, and because this one is a high-profile case, so what was your decision?
Exactly. That is not told us in the statement.
Let's speak to the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC who's joining us right now on telephone, Mustafa Gbande. Thank you, sir, for your time here on Top Story.
Thank you very much, Evans.
Also joining me is the national organizer of the NPP. He is Nana Boachi, and he was actually in the meeting. Nana, thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you, Evans.
Nana, because you were in the meeting, I need to ask you, did the police give yourselves and the NDC in this meeting clarity on what decision they've come to, having analyzed the Brian Champon comments that the NDC had petitioned them about?
Oh, yes. Good evening, Evans, and good evening to your cherished listeners. Yes, yesterday they provided answers to some of the issues we have raised in our petitions. I would want to believe that professionally the reason why they do not put out their responses to the two petitions would be we formally petition them, and then they also want to formally respond to us. So their press statement will not be an appropriate forum for them to respond to the petitioners. That is why they probably did not state in their release their verdict after they ran these commentaries through their legal scrutiny. But yes, they did so. In fact, it was almost about a 3-hour meeting. And specifically to your question, when they briefed us on the two interventions they have introduced into their operations, number one, that is the National Elections Security Task Force Secretariat. And then the legal structures or the legal mechanisms they have put in place to run all these politically controversial statements through their system. Then they would run it alongside the applicable laws, and then they would either conclude or otherwise that this would amount to a criminal offense. So they started from former President John Dramani Mahama. They played the entire tape where we alleged that he made some comment, and for us it is an offensive comment, and it is contrary to the Criminal Offences Act. They said that they did their checks, everything, they passed it through their system, it went to their theater, and then they thought that it did not meet the threshold for them to label the conduct as an offensive or a criminal conduct. They then moved to Chairman Ezedun Ketia, and the same process was applied, and they concluded that, again, it did not meet the threshold. And they came to the Swami Youth Organizer, and then the Swami Youth Organizer, they played the entire tape, and they were of the view that clearly, patently, it had crossed the threshold, and for that matter, he ought to be apprehended and then put before the law court. And then they came to Honorable Brande Champong, and again, they said that yes, Honorable Brande Champong, they ran. In fact, what they said was that even before the petition came, they had already done their checks. They've run it through the theater. But then when they received the petition, again, they did their checks again because of the petition. And the conclusion was the same, that Honorable Brande Champong's comment did not meet the threshold. And they made a significant statement that, yes, a statement may not be palatable to your ears. It may not be good to your ears. You may not like it. You want somebody to say it a different way. Or in your view, you think that it is a statement that can raise the political temperature. They understand. But the fact that a particular statement is unpalatable to your ears does not make it a crime.
Okay.
And then based on that, they advise us that some of these things can raise the political temperature. We need to be mindful of our words. We need to be careful of the comments we make, and then all of that. So yes,
okay.
But again, I would want to say that maybe they did not state in their release because officially we had petitioned them, and officially they have to respond. That forum was not to hear the petition or the otherwise of it. So I think that is the more reason why they did not include that in their release.
Okay, so that offers some clarity. So on Brad Champon, police conclusion is we've analyzed it through the legal framework. It doesn't meet the legal threshold for action to be taken. For John Mahama too, they came to the same conclusion, but a different conclusion for the NDC youth organizer in Ashanti region. In essence, these are the bullet points.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, please stay with me, Nana Boache. So joining me right now, as I said earlier, is the Deputy General Secretary, Mr. Bande. So that's I believe your team. I saw in there. John Ezedun Ketia, the national chairman, and the general secretary himself would have briefed the entire team now. I believe that has happened. Now you've also had the Nana Boache who was there detail this. Does this, do you agree with the police's conclusions on the matter?
Thank you very much, Evans. I think that the debate is more interesting because the IGP deserves some commendation for his initiative. However, I must say that it is not his place to be finding other measures to handle a crime. There are already known mechanisms how crimes should be handled. One of it is one is required to make a formal complaint or a petition when an offensive conduct or a comment that is made that has a tendency of being explosive as against the Public Order Act. Number two, such a person ought to have been invited by the police. And so, if the police fail to invite the suspect involved, who is Brother Champon, and then adopt a measure which is more reconciliatory between political parties, we are not at loggerheads. We are very friendly forces. The MPP and the NDC are brothers. And so, crime is crime. You must treat crimes distinct from how you handle political parties.
Yeah, but who determines if it's crime? If you read the police's statement, and from what Nana Boakye has just recounted, the police say they first want to analyze this through a set up legal frame, do a legal analysis, and first determine, is this a crime? Can we charge him with something? And from what I've just heard from Nana Boakye, they've come to the conclusion that there's nothing to charge him with, and so it doesn't meet that threshold.
Have they invited the suspect? Even the mechanism for determining whether a comment constitutes a crime or it meets the threshold of a crime. First of all, you must instigate or you must begin some processes. And the first process is that there must be a complainant, or in other words, the police must act on some information or a petition be filed before the police. When that is done, the suspect involved must be invited to make a statement to the police. And so that is the mechanism through which issues pertaining to crimes must go through. I think that this whole initiative by the police is a scheme that sought to equalize issues, that because His Excellency John Dramani Mahama has made some comments, because Nana B and his people have doctored a tape of my national chairman in their struggle to let it look as if Brian was speaking to respond to some issue of a sort. It is neither here nor there. The young man make reckless comments, condemnable comments that have the tendency to, be explosive and to undermine the peace and security of this country. The simple exercise for the police was to invite the suspect upon a complaint which had been lodged officially with them. Calling a meeting, the police service is not a palace. Neither the IGP is a chief to be mediating crimes. You cannot mediate crime. It is not his place. It is his duty to arrest. The Swami young man made comments the police feel were not proper in accordance with law. They invited him, cautioned him, arraigned him before court, and that is acceptable. Brian Achampon made similar comments that are more dangerous, coming from a more dangerous person who has the capacity to carry out what he has said. And the IGP is saying that he passed the evidence through his theater. What theater? There's no theater other than the law. Okay, the law is that you should charge the person, investigate, and put the matter before court.
And don't forget,
I think we should be worried.
And don't forget, Mustafa, that they apply that same principle in evaluating the NPP petition about John Mahama and came to that same conclusion.
That's the knee-jerk approach.
That did not meet the threshold. If you apply your principle, then they should be also inviting John Mahama and taking him to the process.
I'm stating that is a knee-jerk approach. When His Excellency John Dramani Mahama made these comments, it's been about 6 months. When did the police realize that they were going to examine what His Excellency John Dramani Mahama said?
But the police...
And so the NPP sought to equalize the condemnable statements of Brian Achampong to what His Excellency John Dramani Mahama have said. It is an afterthought.
Yeah, but
it's an afterthought.
It may be an afterthought on the part of the MPP, but if you're applying your principle, once they have petitioned, then the police must act in triggering the process of inviting John Mahama and going through that whole process. Whether you believe it is belated or afterthought or not, your principle is once the petition has gone, then you must act. And then once you've done that, then you can determine at the end of that process whether you want to proceed or not.
On one day, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama made a comment. On another day, Brian Achampong made comment. On other days, a Swami youth organizer of the NDC made another comment. They are not the same. And you cannot be comparing the magnitude of who is involved to determine whether there was a crime or not. I'm saying that whether there was a complaint to the police, there was no complaint to the police, even if the police were to act on the basis that they have had information, the first thing to do is to invite suspects.
So fair to say they should invite John Mahama too.
Speak to the people in their capacity as suspects. You haven't invited the suspect. You are inviting a ceremony of political parties. You are massaging crime and giving room. Crime is not like a Father Christmas where political parties will come to you and tell you that they are going to commit crime. So IGP go and set up a desk, set up a legal desk. It is not the business of the police to be setting up a legal desk. It is the business of the police to arrest, investigate, and put people before court. The court will do its work. Let not the IGP, take over the work of the court to be setting up a legal desk, investigating and examining political comments. Whether it came from a politician, it came from a farmer, once it is a comment that has a tendency of undermining peace and security, once it is a comment that has a tendency of offending other people's rights, the police ought to act.
You get the point that he's making there, that the police have established processes for determining criminality or otherwise, and the courts have that sole mandate, not the police. What do you make of that?
Evans, before, please, who is the other gentleman?
There's a Deputy General Secretary of the NDC, Mustafa Bande.
Oh, okay. Mustafa, I think sometimes before you make some of these comments and then interviews, you need to speak to your superiors. Your General Secretary that is your direct boss, he was in a meeting. Your whole National Chairman was in a meeting. And then your National Communications Officer also joined. And they rather commended the police for the 2 interventions they have introduced into the operations. So I'm surprised that you would be on live radio and then you would try to bastardize the systems they are seeking to put in place or the systems they have introduced to support and aid their operations. I'm surprised. So I mean, this is just a humble advice that you need to speak to your bosses when you are granting such interviews, so that it will not be as if you are is your independent mind or is your personal position you want to put across. But what he said is totally inaccurate. Now, that is the more reason why I said the police decided not to, in my view, not to respond to the petition in their release, because professionally, NDC led by their legal director, Mr. Amaliba, petitioned. Myself as national organizer, I also petitioned. Formally, they are going to respond to us. In fact, they called us, the opening remarks, COP Tete Yonu mentioned that the political temperature in the country is a bit up. They felt that and then in the NDC's petition, they had also mentioned, they had requested that they wanted to know the update on all of these politically related cases that we have in court. So they felt that it was a very good moment for all of us to come together, and then they will share with us the update on all of these cases. And indeed, they did so. They ran us through all the cases and where it has gotten to, and they gave us update on all the cases. So, as police, so anybody who comes at all to make any frivolous complaint, then the police will just drag the person to court. I don't think that is a very professional way.
That is not what I said.
Oh, no, you said that in your mind.
No, that's not what I said. I said the first step, the mechanism,
I think that
mechanism
we have to restrain him.
is that the suspect
quiet when he was making his point.
Yeah, Nana, please proceed.
Yes, so the fact of the matter is that the police says they have introduced these two things now, simply because, in fact, they even added that the era where maybe somebody would put a certain conduct out, and that conduct is offensive to the law, and then they would have to bring the person to Accra, is even over. Because they had even scrutinized the comments from Honorable Brian Champon. And if they had found any comments from him contrary to the law, it would be the Impriaso District Police Command that would even invite Honorable Brian Champon, not even Accra. And that is how they want to demystify all of this, and then, there are some big hands up there. No, the police everywhere should do their policing work. So for me, it is a very good move, and all of us in the room commended the police. That is a very proactive way they have, or a very proactive strategy they have introduced into their operations. That you don't wait for people to come to you before you start acting. That would be reactive. So even before we came, they had run everything, and they show us videos, and they gave us updates of everything. So all of us in the room commended the police for this act. So from what Mustafa is saying, then I should rather also go back, because he mentioned that His Excellency the former president made those comments 6 months ago. For purposes of education, criminal offense is not statute bar. At any point in time, it can be resurrected. With evidence, we can put you before the law court for prosecution. So the fact that the former president made those comments 6 months ago, it is not an immunity that because 6 months had elapsed, you cannot go back and resurrect the matter. No. It is false. So yes, even if he made those comments even years back, and if we are of the view that it is contrary to the Criminal Offences Act, the police can go into it. But they have the discretion as to whether to proceed and put the person before the law.
Okay, so from what you said, because of time, from what you said, you're expecting a formal response to your petition about John Mahama.
Oh, exactly. I mean, the police said that they were going to respond formally to us.
Okay, Mustafa, if you want to clarify that for me, the positions you expressed, is that a position the party adopts, having sat to the meeting and reflects?
In the coming hours, I think the party will make its official position on this matter known. Among other issues, has to do with various complaints, criminal issues before the police, electoral issues such as the Chiman South issue, the Ejura matter, and then the Okaikwe, for which the police in that meeting sought to give reasons why they haven't been able to go into prosecution of those issues. And that stands very unsatisfactory to the party and most of us. And so I believe that soon that will come out. But let me stick and say that Nana B have failed to answer the question except to try and give legal education. I have not said that the IGP didn't do well. Before I started my interview, I said it's commendable. But that is short of the laid down mechanisms in how crimes should be dealt with, particularly when a complaint is made. Someone ought to be invited. That is all I'm saying.
Okay. Mustafa, thank you very much. And Abi, thank you very much also. And in the wake of the pronouncements by Brian Champon, it was widely condemned. Dr. Ishmael Norman, security analyst, was one who raised questions about that approach. So now that he's heard what the IGP plans to do about this, having analyzed this using his legal team, I wonder what he makes, having heard the two parties who were in that meeting with the IGP. Dr. Norman, thanks for your time.
You're welcome, Evans.
Doc, you heard the two reps of the NDC and MPP, and you've seen the I guess the IGP's statement from the police. What do you make of the approach the police has adopted in dealing with this subject?
Wonderful. I think it's a greetings to Nana Boachi and Mr. Bandi. I think it's a wonderful thing that the IGP has come forward with, because he was beginning to take the law into his own hands, and now there's a bit of due process to the whole exercise of evaluating whether a crime has been committed or not, rather than rushing to arrest people. So he needs to apologize to all the people they rushed to arrest them in the past. Going forward, however, the makeup of the task force cannot be just police officers, cannot be just those he listens to. There has to bring in, he has to open it wide. Otherwise, at some point, it will become adulterated and bastardized. So it's a good thing, but we know how systems in Ghana get infiltrated, and before you know it, it doesn't work anymore for its intended purpose. I believe that just as the IGP is going to apply almost like a double pronged approach to assessing whether a crime has been committed by mere speech, not conduct, he has to extend that also to the churches when they make prophecies, because that thing he started doing is totally unconstitutional and he has to stop it. So I am happy about this development, and I'm happy that he's been listening to some of the conversations that we've been making and criticizing him. So it's a good thing. So I think they should let Mr. Bandi and Mr. Boachi should allow sleeping dogs to lie, because I think we are in a new dispensation, a new paradigm in terms of approaching and assessing political speeches. So I think everybody should chill and let's move forward with this newfound approach of more objective way of assessing whether harm has been committed against the sense and sensibilities of the Ghanaian people.
Dr. Ichima Norman, thank you very much. And if you've heard the IGP's approach to dealing with the issues, you've heard the two political parties on this. Where do you stand on this approach? 055 11 997